Good morning. I want to jump in by reminding everyone of our 4 directives. First, to give closure to the families. The second, to clear the channel and fully open vessel traffic to the port. Third, to take care of all of the people who have been impacted by this crisis. And fourth, to rebuild the Key Bridge. And we'll start with Directive 1. I want to begin by saying that today and every day, we continue to think about and pray for the 6 victims of the Key Bridge collapse and also their families. Last week, the Maryland State Police successfully recovered the remains of the 6th and final victim of the collapse and also notified their family. And before I go any further, let me start with this. I am truly in awe of our unified command. The only reason that we were able to retrieve all 6 victims is because of the constant communication between every single part of this team. State Police, the Coast Guard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Navy SUPSOLV, and all of our partners, state, local, and federal, stood shoulder to shoulder every single moment. And finding these 6 victims was not guaranteed. When you're dealing with so much wreckage, even a small lapse in communication can cause failure. But this team held firm. They knew that bringing comfort and closure to these families was not an option, it was obligatory, and it was a core part of this mission. We said we would do it, and we did. We promised the families on the first day that we would stop at nothing to bring them support. And even after it became a recovery mission, we told them the same, that we would stop at nothing to bring them the closure that they've earned. And so I say to all the members of the Unified Command, thank you. Thank you for taking this mission so seriously. And God bless you all. And I also want to speak directly to the families for a moment as well. To the loved ones of Alejandro Hernandez Fuentes, Jose Lopez, Dorlean Castillo Cabrera, Menor Yasir Suazo Sandoval, Carlos Daniel Hernandez Estrella, and Miguel Angel Luna Gonzalez. I promised that we would do everything in our power to bring your family members back. And I pray that the fulfillment of our word can bring you some peace. But I recognize that there are no words that can fix the pain that you are feeling. So please know that we will continue to support you in your journey towards healing. And please know that we will do everything in our power to honor those that you've lost. Please know that despite your horrible loss, your loved ones will always be with you, guiding you forward and lighting your path. Promete que nos íbamos a parar ante nada para traer de regreso a sus familias. Y rezo para que el cumplimiento de nuestra promesa les traiga algo de paz. Pero sé que no hay palabras que pueden aliviar el dolor que sienten en este momento. Por favor, tengan en cuenta que vamos a hacer todo lo que está a nuestro alcance para honrar a las almas que hemos perdido. We brought our recovery efforts to completion. But I do want to be clear. We will continue to provide support and comfort to these families. And this is a commitment that will not waver. Now, second, on clearing the federal channel and fully opening vessel traffic to the port. We remain on track to fully reopen the full 50-foot channel, and this evening at 5 p.m., weather permitting, Unified Command will deploy the use of precision cutting to clear the wreckage on top of the dolly. We discussed these precision cuts during our last press conference, and the strategy we will use on the key bridge wreckage was used to remove and replace the Harry Nice Bridge in Charles County. So there is precedent, and this is a best practice. I've said it before, and I will say it again, that safety in this operation is our top priority. We've gotten to this point without a single injury. We plan on continuing this mission without a single injury. That is the standard that we have going forward. The use of precision cuts will help us to preserve our strong safety record on this mission, and I want to remind everybody just how complicated this mission is. This here is an actual picture of the personnel who we have sitting up top. I want to be clear that when we're seeing where they are right now, they are 180 feet in the air. The thing we know about this type of height, and what you're seeing what they're doing here, they're doing both cutting and also preparation for the removal of this truss that's sitting on top of the dolly. This is an example of just a piece, what we see in this picture here, of just a piece of the truss that still needs to be removed in order for the dolly to be refloated so we can then continue the process of fully opening up the federal channel. But them sitting at 180 feet in the air, there's a couple of really important things to remember with that. The first important thing to remember is that any type of adjustments or movements within the winds can have significant impact on their basic stability. So when you're looking at wind gusts, when you're looking at wind movements, when you're looking at that height, regardless of the crane and the infrastructure that we have here, can have significant impacts on their ability to be able to smoothly and also safely make the type of cuts that are required and are necessary. And also things like lightning strikes. So anytime you watch changes in weather and lightning, it's the reason why operations immediately have to come to a close to be able to ensure the safety of our workers. The second piece is this. You've heard us repeatedly mention the importance that this is a no-drone zone, that drones cannot and will not be permitted nor tolerated inside of this area. Part of the reason that it is so important to have this as a no-drone zone is because we have people who are conducting incredibly complicated and dangerous operations. Any type of variable that you place into that, to include the use of private drones, doesn't just challenge the operation, it challenges their safety. So once again, to all people who are considering or thinking about putting out their private drones because they're trying to capture any images, we are telling you, do not test us on this. The safety of these individuals is far too important. And we're now very close to fully clearing the channel, and we're already getting large ships in and out of the port of Baltimore. And over the next week, we are expecting about 30 vessels and barges at the port's public and private terminals. Those vessels will include container ships, roll-on, roll-off ships carrying farm machinery and new cars, bulk ships carrying sugars, metals, and oil. Now, there were some who, when we were here weeks ago, looked at the complexity of this operation and said, this is going to take months in order to clear this channel. Well, here we are now, and I'm thankful for the fact that because of the hard work, the diligence, the speed, the 24/7 operation that has taken place, we've been able to get it done in a matter of weeks. And again, I thank Unified Command for their dedication and for their tenacity. Now, third, on taking care of our people, our administration has launched 4 programs to help businesses affected by the collapse. So far, we've been able to help 306 businesses through $22 million in support. The Worker Retention Program has helped to keep nearly 2,700 workers on the job. The Worker Support Program has delivered a total of $2.8 million in cash assistance to more than 2,000 port workers as of the end of last week. And as of last week, 1,000 unemployed Marylanders have received support through regular unemployment insurance. As we begin to get the port operations back to full capacity, we will begin to wind down support through the Worker Retention Program. And I want Marylanders to know that we will only accept applications through this Friday, May 17th. Businesses that still need support for payroll or operations can continue to access programs at the Department of Commerce and the Department of Housing and Community Development. And individuals who regularly work at the port are still able to apply for the Worker Support Program and unemployment insurance. So I encourage all Marylanders to visit response.maryland.gov/bridge to learn more about these programs, to make sure you're applying, and also other operations and other supports that we have in place. From day one, we've been guided by a very simple principle. Mission first, people always. And that has not changed. Now, fourth, on rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge. In order to rebuild this bridge, we need the support of the U.S. Congress. And to date, we personally met with, spoken with, and had coordination with nearly 100 members of Congress. Last week, our team has had another meeting with Secretary Pete Buttigieg and the Director of Management and Budget, Shalonda Young. On May 2nd, we welcome Republican Chairman Tom Cole and also Chair Womack and members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee to the City of Baltimore. Unified Command, when that happened, took us out on a Coast Guard cutter to see the wreckage, and I was able to speak directly with members of the committee on both sides of the aisle. And I can tell you they were deeply moved by what they saw. Because we are talking about a shipping vessel that is 984 feet long and that can weigh more than 116,000 tons at full capacity. For all sports fans, I'll put it to you this way. That's the length of 3 football fields. That is the weight of Camden Yards at full capacity. That's what's sitting in the middle of the Patapsco River. Members of the House Committee got to see that ship and the Key Bridge that's sitting on top of it. And I explained to them that every time we go out there, it's something you never get used to seeing. I've spoken with Chairman Cole many times, and he has repeatedly given his commitment to ensuring that Congress does their part to help us out. Also the same with Chairman Womack. And I also want to give a special thank you to the leaders of our delegation, Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, for taking the Senate floor to discuss the importance of rebuilding the Key Bridge. I want to say it publicly, and I will keep on saying it publicly. Without the leadership of Senator Cardin, we're not where we are already, sir. We are grateful beyond words to you for your leadership and your support. And also, on Wednesday, we will hold a hearing on the bridge collapse. That hearing will be chaired by Republican Sam Graves, and I had a chance to speak with Chairman Graves a few weeks ago, and actually again last week, and I appreciate his partnership. His committee will soon learn what all of us know, that rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge is not about nostalgia. It's about necessity. This is a critical artery of commerce at the Port of Baltimore and all along the I-95 corridor. We need this bridge rebuilt, and we need to get it done with full congressional support. The bridge replacement is qualified for expedited permit review under the National Environmental Policy Act categorical exclusion list. So we are moving fast. We're covering all bases. We're not slowing down, and we're going to get it done together. And our coalition continues to grow by the day. I'm proud to stand with each and every one of our partners. And I want to make note that as we're looking to our left and to our right, these are individuals who have been here since day one, who've been working, coordinating. Our local leaders, our mayor, our county executive, every member of this team who has put in remarkable, remarkable work. Our lieutenant governor, leading the charge and making sure we're supporting our workers. But also, each and every one of us are incredibly proud to be joined here today by House Speaker Emerita, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi is here because she doesn't just understand what's at stake for the nation. She firmly and gutturally understands what's at stake for Baltimore. And I say gutturally because she grew up here. Her father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., served as the mayor of Baltimore for over a decade. Her brother was mayor from 1967 to 1971. This is a family with a very long history of public service, not just to this country, but to this city. And I can tell you one of the first people that reached out to me after the collapse of the Key Bridge was Speaker Pelosi. In the halls of Congress, she's already been working on our behalf. She's been rallying the cause. She's been working with leaders on both sides of the aisle to marshal support that we need to rebuild this bridge. And she's breaking down party divisions to unite the House so we can come together and get the job done. So to Speaker Pelosi, I want to say thank you for showing what it means to be Maryland tough and Baltimore strong. So in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Speaker Pelosi, and we're also joined by the following speakers: Admiral Gilreath, representing Unified Command; Senator Ben Cardin; Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott; Baltimore County Executive Johnny O. And I want to thank all of our partners here for their support and their tireless leadership. Now, I'll turn it over to Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you very much, Governor, for your warm welcome, for the invitation to be here today in Baltimore, my Baltimore. I'm happy to be here with family members, Nikki D'Alessandro and Skylar, my nephew and grandniece. And again, thank you for acknowledging my father and brother and their years of service to Baltimore. What we are hearing here today is something very special for America. When this bridge was put in jeopardy, the governor has given us a path on how we come back, starting with the families. I want the families to know that I bring with me the condolences of the Congress of the United States, already conveyed by the distinguished Maryland delegation. But you are in our thoughts, our hearts, and our prayers, and will be for a long time. And I hope you'll tell your children the heroes that their dads, uncles, relatives are to all of us in all of this. And I'm glad that I join of the governor in saluting Unified Command, the first responders who made closure possible by their discovery and their relentlessness until that job was done. Thank you, Governor, for leading with the families. Secondly, in terms of opening up the path to ships and all, well, I just came back from New Orleans, where I was, and reviewed with some of the folks there what we did after Katrina, because some of it was new. It was new. And what we learned in Katrina is to listen to the locals, and that is what I'm here today to further do. We have observed the leadership. The governor has demonstrated a capacity that is boundless in terms of absorbing new information in a new situation, having the judgment to make a call on different paths to go. And this is remarkable because there's so much emotion involved when there's loss of life and loss of livelihood for so many people. So, Governor, thank you. Thank you so much for showing the way. And as you acknowledged, Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen in the Senate, our congressional delegation, House congressional delegation, just relentless on the floor of the House. This is Kwasi Mfume's district. He's the chairman of the Morgan State University, so he's at the college today, and I'll join him later. But his concern is boundless also and endless in this regard. And Sarbanes, Congressman Sarbanes will be joining us on the tour, but all of the members have been there. And I thank you especially for acknowledging Ben Cardin, because in the House, I served with him in the House, in the Senate, he has been a leader not only for Baltimore and Maryland, but for the country as well. Thank you, Ben Cardin. But learning also from your lieutenant governor, who, and by dint of her education and engineering and all of that, and her work in the state legislature, is a valuable resource in all of this arena. Lieutenant Governor Miller. Brandon Scott has been about equity and fairness on how we address challenges that we have. Of course, Johnny O, where you go? Johnny O has been about community and working families and the rest, so seeing the solutions through those eyes, very important to us, because our president will always ask the question, Joe Biden, because he's been essential in so much of what we need to be done, and he will always ask the question, what does this mean to the workers? What does it mean to working families? Johnny O and the mayor have been that's what they have been about, and they bring those values along with the governor and the lieutenant governor to all of this. As the governor pointed out, the danger in the repair and the rest, let us salute our friends in labor who are doing so much of that. I'm always in awe of them. I see it firsthand at the Golden Gate Bridge. I see here now in repair and the rest. Let us thank them for what they do. And Secretary Whitfield, thank you for bringing all of your leadership to bear on this specific in transportation. And speaking of transportation, I know you mentioned the hearing that is coming up. We're very proud of Rick Larson, the Democratic ranking member on that committee, as well as thank you for acknowledging the Appropriations Committee. I'm an appropriator, so I love when that's recognized, but I also want to acknowledge Rosa DeLauro and Patty Murray, two women heads of the Appropriations Committee. Barbara Mikulski was one of the first women to head up the, another Maryland connection in terms of what comes next, finding the money for all of this. And so it is, I know we'll hear from the Admiral about so much of what will come next. We thank our friends in the Coast Guard for what they have been doing, what they will do as well, and Commander Moose as well. So again, I just want to end with this Maryland tribute that I pay all the time, and now I'll pay it here. You know that the national anthem was written in Baltimore at the War of 1812. And people cheer at the end, home of brave land, of, all that at the end. But where I want people to cheer, and what serves our purpose right now, is the part where it says, proof through the night that our flag was still there, that our flag was still there. Through these challenges and difficulties, we want to prove through the night that our flag was still there, and as we pledge, with liberty and justice for all, with liberty and justice for all. So that's Maryland, it's Baltimore strong, it's just stay here, and again, to the state of Maryland and the great leadership of the governor. Thank you for providing a model to the nation on how to deal with a challenge, as you have said, with speed, but not at the sacrifice of safety. Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, no.
Good morning. I'm Rear Admiral Guillory speaking on behalf of the Unified Command. First, our thoughts and prayers remain with the families. We are thankful that we were able to recover all of the victims, but our thoughts and prayers remain with them. Second, on the progress towards restoring commerce to the Port of Baltimore, we continue to make excellent progress in that regard. Over the last 7 weeks, we've moved a total of 365 commercial vessels through the alternate channels that have been established. And since last Wednesday night, we reopened the limited access deep draft channel for traffic, and we've continued to move vessels through there on a not to interfere with salvage basis. And we are going to keep that open until this afternoon, when we will close that until we are able to complete the precision cutting on the dolly. So to update you on the salvage operations, the first priority is, again, clearing all the debris from the deep draft channel. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Navy Supervisors of Salvage, and their contractors, along with all the other salvage who are participating, continue to make great progress in that regard. They have now deepened that channel to 48 feet in depth, and it's now 350 feet wide. And they will continue to work on that channel after we are able to do the precision cutting tonight on the dolly. So as removal of the ship, that was our second priority, remove the ship. We are making progress in that regard. We had some difficult weather over the last week or so with some high winds, and yesterday we had some delays due to lightning. But we are on track for this afternoon at 1700 to do the precision cutting. After we do the precision cutting, we will then go back and resurvey the channel as well as survey around the dolly to make sure there are no obstructions that came from that precision cutting that would interfere with traffic. And then we will reopen the limited access channel to traffic at that particular point in time. And then we will refloat the dolly and remove the dolly in approximately 2 days. So that's the plan, to remove the dolly. And then third, the state continues to make great progress along with the salvers to remove the remaining debris from the waterway. And as you can see visually and notice the difference over these last 7 weeks, you can see that almost all the steel truss that was above the water line across the entire bridge section has now been removed. And that's been great progress. And we are on track to fully reopen the deep draft channel to 50 feet and 700 feet wide by the end of the month. So those are my updates, and I'll now turn it over to Senator Cardin.
Well, Admiral, first of all, thank you very much. The Unified Command has truly been a model for our nation on teamwork, working together, accomplishing a mission that when we looked at the bridge in the channel on March 26th, I don't think any of us thought we would be where we are today and restoring as much of the traffic through the Port of Baltimore as we have. Congratulations to the Unified Command. We could not have done it without all the people here, and we really salute you for your incredible leadership, your talent, and your commitment. Governor Moore, you made this all happen. It takes the leadership of the governor to bring us all together, to have a game plan that can work. I want you to know the 4 priorities that you mentioned. First, to make sure the families of the victims are taken care of, to bring closure as you have to the 6 victims of this horrible, catastrophic collision and destruction of a bridge has been accomplished. Second, to restore commerce to the Port of Baltimore as quickly as possible, and we are far ahead of schedule in accomplishing that. Third, to take care of the thousands of people that have been hurt by this bridge coming down. The businesses, the employees, the workers, the business coming into Baltimore, all that has been impacted by it, and you have developed a game plan working with all of your partners at the federal, state, local levels, been able to get that done. And then third, to make sure that the story of the Francis Scott Key Bridge does not end here, that a replacement bridge will be rebuilt as quickly as possible, and it will be built even stronger to deal with the current realities of commerce that come through the port. You have the total support of our Maryland federal delegation. All 10 of our members support those 4 missions. I want to give a shout out to Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Mfume, but our entire district. Speaker Pelosi, it is always wonderful to have you here. You really energize us all, so thank you so much. Speaker Pelosi and I have served in many ways together through many missions. She is an inspiration for everyone, And we're glad that you may have a home in San Francisco, but your heart really is in Baltimore, and we appreciate that very much. And we have never, ever acknowledged your citizenship anything other than it being in Baltimore. So thank you so much for your leadership. Team that put this together, it's been our governments, private sector, companies, nonprofits, all working together, originally taking care of the first responders. Restaurants closed their businesses in order to make sure that they could provide the food. To take care of the families, we've seen companies come forward with resources. But the extraordinary leadership at the local level is perhaps the most challenging. So to Mayor Brandon Scott and to County Exec Johnny Oshesky, you didn't worry about where the line between Baltimore City and Baltimore County was. You worked together as a team with Stuart Pittman and Anne Arundel County, and you provided what we needed at the time to make sure there were no gaps. And that's an extraordinary partnership in order to bring this about. And to Lieutenant Governor Miller, I want to thank you because Speaker Pelosi's right. It's wonderful to have an engineer available that we can get free advice for at the state level. So it's really been a team effort. I just want to make one last point. This is National Infrastructure Week. And we would not be in the position today, Governor, to get the funds we need to replace the bridge if it were not for the leadership of President Biden and Speaker Pelosi in getting that infrastructure bill to the finish line that puts enough money in the federal checking account so we can deal with major infrastructure in this country. Because you see, the replacement of the Francis Scott Key Bridge will be one of the largest infrastructure transportation programs in America. It's going to require a considerable amount of resources. We are going to receive the money from the Emergency Relief Fund. We'll get the money. But there are other projects in the nation that need funds. And if we didn't have the replenishments that came through the infrastructure bill, Madam Speaker, we would never be in the position we are today to give the confidence that we'll be able to get the money necessary for the bridge. And Governor Moore, you've talked, I think your Rolodex on members of Congress is better than mine. I'm going to have to get your list to help us figure out how I can reach members as quickly as you have. But you have been there just reaching out, and it pays off, believe me, because I've heard from so many of my colleagues in the House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, supporting us on the bill that we need to get passed that would make it clear that the federal share will be 100%. Right now it's a 90-10, but at every one of these catastrophic events that have occurred in our country, we've always provided 100% federal funds, and I'm confident we're going to be able to get that legislation passed. Senator Van Hollen and I have introduced that bill in the Senate. Congressman Mfume and our other members have introduced that in the House, and we're optimistic to get that bill done. But that's not the end of the funding. As the governor pointed out in the meeting I just had with Chairman Carper, the insurance companies believe this could be the largest claim ever from a vessel accident in maritime history. We're going to get the federal taxpayer reimbursed through insurance and liability claims for the damages that have been caused. So as we need the money today so that we don't delay in replacing the bridge that's so important to the artery on the east coast of the United States, those responsible and those insurance claims will help to make sure the federal taxpayer gets the relief from those responsible for this horrible catastrophic event. So it's been a great team effort. We're not done yet. We still have a lot more to do. But I must tell you, Governor, we're a lot further along the way than I thought we would be when I looked at that bridge on March 26. Congratulations for your extraordinary leadership. And I'm going to bring up one of the key partners in all of this, the Mayor of Baltimore, Brandon Scott.
Good morning, and thank you, Senator. On that fateful day of March 26, I made a remark that our focus had to be on the individuals that were missing, that we lost, and their families. And there will come a time when we could fully switch our focus on to reopening the channel and rebuilding the bridge. Thanks to this unified command, we never lost our way. We will always focus on recovering those victims, those heroes, and bringing them home to their families to provide some sort of closure. So I want to say thank you to Unified Command, not for just delivering on that promise, but for helping those families begin, which is going to be a lifelong effort of having closure and peace brought to them and their families. Nothing will fully overcome the pain of their loss, but I'm deeply grateful to Unified Command and everybody, especially those first responders who've been out there working to bring your loved ones home. Please know that the little peace and closure that this brings for the families, we will continue to support them each and every day as we have been since that fateful day, even as we now turn our focus to reopening of the federal channel fully. To that end, as discussed later today, Unified Command will have our precision cuts to remove the debris of the Key Bridge from the bow of the Dalley. I guess I want to say again that this is a safe and thoughtful approach, but it may be loud and noticeable in a way that the process has not been thus far, especially for those working in the industrial areas around the bridge. Again, we ask that everyone obey the safety drone and the urge to resist flying your drone into the area, because we do not want to jeopardize the workers. We haven't had anyone get hurt thus far, and we will not have that happen because someone wants to fly a drone. The work here, as you've heard, has been remarkable. None of us that fateful day thought we would be thus far, so far, as quickly as we are. So I want to reiterate my thanks to my governor, to Unified Command, the hundreds of Army Corps, Coast Guard, and Navy service members, as well as the civilians, sailors, and workers who have done this diligent work each and every day, minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour, and doing it the right way to make sure that everyone remains safe. You all have kept those impacted in your focuses, in your hearts, and you all have shown, as you heard before, the nation a telltale of how you can work together across agencies, across branches of government. I also want to extend my thanks to Speaker Pelosi and say, welcome home, ma'am. We are so glad to have you home. We'll be sure to send you back with some blue crabs to replace those Dungeness crabs that they try to feed you in San Francisco. We know how formidable you are, but we want to say thank you for always showing up for Baltimore and working as the extra member of the Maryland Congressional Delegation, of which we know we have the best in the country, led by Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, and of course our wonderful Congressman Kwasi Mfume. Thank you, Mr. Senator, for leading our delegation and showing the rest of the country how you're supposed to show up for your state and for your city. And with that, I will turn it over to my partner and Senator. This is a little easy for the county executive and I. This is how we work every day. We make these efforts on things starting when I came to office on simple as snow removal, where we ended the practice of just picking up the plow at the line and said, no, we're going to go over and make sure that we work together in deep ways and deep partnerships. So when you have something like this, it's muscle memory for us to work because we are one Baltimore, one region, and we'll be stronger together. And with that, I will turn it over to my partner, County Executive Olszewski.
Thank you to my friend and partner, Mayor Scott. He's right. We are all one Baltimore, and that's been the case since day one when we started our work together. So, Mayor, thank you for your partnership. It truly makes a difference, particularly in moments of great challenge. And to Baltimore's favorite daughter, Speaker Pelosi, thank you for always keeping Baltimore in your heart and for always coming back, for always showing up, and for being that extraordinary bonus member of our federal delegation, as the mayor referenced. We are lucky to count you as a friend, as a partner, and thanks for being part of an extended part of the delegation family led by Senator Cardin, who has done an outstanding job, as the governor has said, in this moment, along with Congressman Mfume, Senator Van Hollen, and the rest of our team. I'll again just extend my thoughts and prayers to the impacted families, those who lost loved ones. We are so grateful that we have an outstanding team who've been able to recover our victims in this moment. It's a reinforcement of how incredibly hard working this unified command is, but with how much care and thoughtfulness with which they operate. So our prayers remain with those impacted. It's interesting. I started my career as a government teacher, and one of the things that we taught our students were about the different levels of government. We talked about the federal government, the state government, and local government. And it's not until moments like this you understand just how important each of those pieces are. And so when you see our national government, our Congress, step forward in a moment of crisis to help bridge the gap and fill the need to rebuild our bridge, when you see our state and local government stepping forward to meet the needs of the impacted port workers and truck drivers and small businesses, when you see all levels of government coalescing around opening up the shipping channel, it's just a reminder of how important our system is, and it's an example of what works best. This is truly the best example of teamwork I've seen in my career, and that is in no small reason thanks to the leadership of our governor and our lieutenant governor. Governor Moore, thank you for continuing to lead the charge. We are proud to follow you in this moment and always. So we've got work ahead of us still, but every day is a new glimmer of hope and a new reason to be inspired and to push towards what's next. So thank you very much.
Probably for the Rear Admiral. Thank you. So as for the safety of the crew on board the Dolly, can you just talk about what you're doing to protect them, and also what went into the decision to keep them on board the ship as part of the process today?
Yeah, so safety is at the forefront of everything that we do. So the crew members themselves will be aft on the ship below decks. There's multiple containers and the decks between them and where the precision cutting will occur. We also have some fire teams set up in case that it's not expected to have a fire, but we've got some fire teams set up in case there was some sort of fire that got started as a result of that. And we're going to have a water curtain on the front of the vessel in between that and where the precision cuts are going to take place as well to prevent that. So we've taken into account the safety of those crew members at the very beginning, and that's what we're doing.
Second part of the question, why are they staying on board? Why aren't they getting off board?
They're staying on board because they're part of the ship. They are necessary to keep the ship safe and operational. If something were to happen, they are in the best place to actually fight a fire on board the ship because they're familiar with it. They're familiar with all of their safety equipment. They are the best responders on board the ship themselves.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi there, Nicole Skanga, CBS National News. Thanks for doing this. For Admiral Gilreath and also if Colonel Pinchason, you have any thoughts here, how do you go about blowing up the bridge without damaging the container ship? I know you spoke a little bit about the crew, but can you walk us through what we're actually going to see today and what some of the biggest challenges are to reopening that deep draft channel? And just for the governor, I know you talked about the $22 million in aid. Can you speak to what the price tag has been thus far, lost commerce? And also, I know, Senator, you spoke about holding individuals accountable. The company that owns the Dolly has filed to petition essentially to shield them from liability. I'm wondering if anyone here can speak to holding those accountable and if that company should be held liable for any damages. Thank you. Sure, no problem.
I'm sorry. Yeah, can you do that one again?
Colonel Pinchason, the first question, how do you go about blowing up the bridge without damaging the container ship Dolly? And can you walk us through what we're going to see today?
So don't take this as an insult. When you say blowing up the bridge, that in of itself is a misconception. I know the term might have been used, explosive cutting. We're calling it precision cutting to help set expectations. It's not what you envision in Hollywood, a big fireball. When we say precision cutting, it is exactly that. These are very small linear charges that are placed into cuts that were made, as the governor showed, and it is going to allow for the pressure from those cuts to literally separate the metal and cut through the steel. It's going to be more like puffs of smoke that you might have seen with the Harry Nice Bridge, and the design that was this plan was designed by engineers to achieve these cuts simultaneously, all at the same time. It's actually the safest and most efficient way to achieve this number of cuts and then have that wreckage fall out and away from the vessel. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
And Admiral, if you can just add some of the largest barriers ahead to actually clearing that deep channel,
I can.
or if you want to speak to it, Colonel.
If you, yeah. So once the wreckage falls into the channel, we will have the vessel refloated, and then you're talking about the wreckage that stays behind. So our salvors are already have the equipment pre-positioned and rigged, ready to come in and remove wreckage, just as we have over the last 7 weeks. They're going to have to either lift it with the grabber, or they'll be removing it after cutting it down some more. But we're continuing the salvage operations in that same methodical and disciplined, safe way that we've been removing wreckage all along. Except this time, the dolly will be at berth safely and out of the way.
Thanks. And yeah, just to repeat to the governor and others who might want to weigh in on whether or not the company that owns the dolly should be held liable, and if you have any price tag for the amount in commerce that's been lost so far, or the amount to workers that's been lost so far. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I can take the liability question first. I mean, there are current investigations that are going on right now. We've been in close communication with not only our federal investigators, such as the FBI, but also our state's attorney general. We know that those who need to be held responsible for this tragedy will be held responsible. I think the senator pointed out, I mean, the Lloyds of London indicated this is going to be the most expensive maritime tragedy in our nation's history. And we are very confident that those who need to be held to account will be held to account, and they will be part of this rebuilding process. For the economic impact, I mean, we're talking about a port that has economic output of $191 million daily. This is significant. It's a significant blow not only to Maryland, but also you're talking about the region and the nation when you consider how this serves as a major core artery for 2/3 of the country receives its goods from the port of Baltimore. And so the reason that we've had that as such a core focus and a core priority, it's both the tens of thousands of workers who are impacted by it, but it is the larger economic hit that this takes towards GDP and the larger supply chain hit that occurred on March 26th. But it is also important to talk about the bridge in that as well, because there are still 3 main connection points that you have to the Port of Baltimore. You have the Harbor Tunnel, you have the Fort McHenry Tunnel, and you have the Key Bridge. Many of the materials that go to the Port of Baltimore, for example, things like hazmat materials, things like our fuel trucks, they are not permitted to go through the tunnels. So the Key Bridge was their core artery in order to gain access to that. And so when you look at the Key Bridge alone, you're talking about a bridge where about $21 billion of commerce went over that bridge. And so it is significant. And so part of the reason why we talk about you can't just focus on a reopening of the port without also talking about the bridge is because the bridge is a core artery to making sure that you have a fully functional and an economically viable Port of Baltimore.
Thank you. We're going to go to the next question. Scott Broom.
Hi, Governor. Scott Broom, WUSA 9 in Washington. Forgive me for harping on this theme because it's one disaster at a time or one thing at a time, but in Maryland, there's a lot of talk about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, which is actually the Preston Lane Bridge. To the north of us in Delaware, they have constructed these big bridge protections. What's next in assessing the safety downstream of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge?
Yeah, I can tell you all of our critical infrastructure, to include the Bay Bridge, are all things that we're continuing to look at to make sure that people know that on our roads and our bridges and our tunnels that they can move across safely, that they can move across effectively. This is a process that was taking place even prior to the collapse of the Key Bridge, but making sure we're focusing on critical infrastructure and the protection of our critical infrastructure. It's not just necessary, but frankly, when we think about the importance of it to the state, it's been something that has been long overdue. We can also have critical infrastructure that have single points of failure. So all these are different things that we're looking in, that we're factoring into how we're thinking about budgetary requirements, how we're thinking about, asks and supports when we have from both state, local, and federal. But both the Bay Bridge and other forms of critical infrastructure are all things that are very high on our priority list. Tom, you want?
And also in partially response to the last question, NTSB is doing an exhaustive study here, and they'll give us a lot of information in regards to what went wrong in regards to the vessel, but also as to the safety features on bridges. And we expect there's going to be standards that will come out of the NTSB investigation that will be used to retrofit current bridges as well as the standard for future bridges. So I think that's going to become a national issue, not just a local issue here.
If I just may add to what Ben said, the distinguished chairman said of the Foreign Affairs Committee, but nonetheless, Senator, what is happening with the bridges is very important, but what is happening with the ships is important too. And as Ben said, they were looking at the ships as well, because you can put the dolphins around the pillars and all of that, but if the ships are better prepared to know when they're going to lose energy, that is a precaution for the bridges as well. And again, as the governor said, this is of national significance. We all are learning from each other on this. And as the governor also said, if you're a restaurateur in Tennessee or you're a car dealer in Ohio, this bridge is important to you in terms of the supply chain. So again, we have, Maryland proud, Baltimore strong, but nationally significant.
Kim Dacey with WBAL. Senator Cardin, you said you were confident that the funding bill would be passed through Congress. What happens if it isn't? Where is the funding going to come from?
There are two questions to that. The funding comes through the Emergency Relief Fund, which is appropriated annually. There's liabilities that they'll have to assume that far exceed the dollars that are in the fund. Congress appropriates money on a regular basis to the Emergency Relief Fund. So we're not too concerned as to the total dollars that we'll be able to get. It should come in the normal course. If the administration seeks supplemental funding for the Emergency Relief Fund, we will certainly be supportive of those efforts to put more money into the account. What we need passed now is the authorization that it will be at 100% rather than 90%. We need that done sooner rather than later because we want to get this bridge moving as quickly as possible. So that's why we're asking to have a procedure so we can get that passed as quickly as possible.
So the initial funding would come from that emergency fund you were referencing?
Correct.
Thank you. I'm going to take one last question.
Hey, I had a quick question about vessel traffic. Out of those, I think I heard 365 commercial vessels have passed through in the past couple of weeks. Could we get an idea of what that traffic looked like and what kind of vessels were passing through, and if any of them were some of these vessels that have been stranded in the port? And also just wanted to get a sense of when the crew might be able to leave the Dolly.
Good morning. My name is Captain Dave O'Connell. I'm the captain of the port here in Baltimore. So roughly out of those 365 vessels, about 30 of them have been deep draft vessels. So that would be container ships, roll-on, roll-off ships. I would say significantly this morning we moved in 3 ships. So there's a combination container roll-on, roll-off ship that came in this morning. A paper ship came in this morning, and a container ship came in this morning. All the vessels that were stranded in port at the initial on the 26th have all flowed out. With the exception of one that had some mechanical issues that were fixed, and that flowed out this morning. And that was a coal ship, one of the deepest draft ships that we have. That was a draft of 47 feet.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate it. You're done.
Thanks.
So the governor will take questions on other topics.